President Trump's honeymoon with the media is officially over. For a while, it seemed like he was really getting along well with the press. He had accepted an invite from the White House Correspondents Association, which is notably the first time he has accepted since he's become president. But the dinner didn't go exactly as planned. A gunman, who has been identified as 31-year-old Cole Tomas Allen, tried to enter the ballroom during the dinner. Shots were fired, but he never made it in. Then after the dinner, Trump gave a press conference in which he said this about White House Correspondents Association President Weijia Jiang.
Madam Chairman, I just want to say you did a fantastic job. What a beautiful evening, and we're going to reschedule. Okay. And after that, it's very tough for her to ask a killer question, right? But you have done a fantastic job. Please.
The next day, he described his reception at the dinner in very glowing terms.
And this time I went, and I felt really good being there. There was a great camaraderie. I wasn't sure what the response. It was, a lot of press, a lot of media. And when I walked in, I got a very nice applause. I wasn't sure. I said, told my wife, I said, I may walk in, and they may give me a hard time, or I may walk in, let's see what happens. And I walked in and got very nice, I think they were happy to see me there, actually.
The next day, Trump went on CBS's 60 Minutes. And it does seem like, at least at the beginning of this interview, Trump is feeling a little bit kumbaya with the press after what they all just went through.
Mr. President, thank you for doing this.
Thank you.
I'm glad you're safe. I am glad that everyone is safe. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It was quite an evening. It was a very difficult thing to watch, frankly, but doing very well.
So the interviewer, who is Norah O'Donnell, she starts off with a softball question, which is pretty standard in journalism. You don't want to start out with the hardest questions first in case you get a person like Donald Trump, who has been known to walk off set if he doesn't like the questions. He did just that with Leslie Stahl back in 2020.
Excuse me, Leslie, you started with me. Your first statement was, are you ready for tough questions?
Are you?
That's no way to talk. There's no way to talk.
Leslie, one second.
At this point, one of our producers interrupted to advise about the time remaining in the interview.
I think we have enough of an interview here, Hope. Okay, that's enough. Let's go.
So O'Donnell probably knows that Trump is a flight risk. She waits till about halfway through the interview to ask him about the manifesto written by the shooter at the White House Correspondents Association dinner.
He writes this quote, "Administration officials, they are targets." And he also wrote this, "I am no longer willing to permit a pedophile, rapist, and traitor to coat my hands with his crimes." What's your reaction to that?
Well, I was waiting for you to read that because I knew you would, because you're horrible people. Horrible people. Yeah, he did write that. I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me. I'm not a pedophile. You read that crap from some sick person. I got associated with all stuff that has nothing to do with me. I was totally exonerated. Your friends on the other side of the plate are the ones that were involved with, let's say, Epstein or other things. But I said to myself, I'll do this interview and they'll probably, I read the manifesto, as a sick person, but you should be ashamed of yourself reading that because I'm not any of those things.
Mr. President,
and
these
I was
are
never,
the gunman's words.
Excuse me. You shouldn't be reading that on 60 Minutes. You're a disgrace. But go ahead, let's finish the interview.
So clearly the kumbaya moment is over and Trump is back to insulting the press. Now, to me, that was a perfectly reasonable question for O'Donnell to ask. As the president, you get asked far less relevant questions all the time. So this was a pretty logical question, and Trump even said that he anticipated it. But I think the issue here is the context. CBS has traditionally, I would say, been more on the left side of the political spectrum in its coverage, so her reading something like that probably to him felt like it was the left trying to paint him in an unflattering light. But this is where I think she doesn't do herself a favor. She asked Trump whether he thinks the shooter is referring to him in the manifesto.
I'm not a rapist. I didn't rape anybody.
Do you think he was referring to you?
Excuse me. I'm not a pedophile.
I personally found it kind of strange that she acted so surprised. If she didn't think that the shooter was referring to the president, why did she ask him that question in the first place? Also, Trump's not mentioned in the manifesto, but his cabinet is. And it's hard to imagine a shooter wanting to take out a president's cabinet and not the president himself. Trump clearly had a bad taste in his mouth from the first question, and you can see here that he's trying to bait her into doing the same thing again. Watch.
I mention that because, again, as his motive, you brought this up, he had social media accounts that had anti-Trump and anti-Christian rhetoric.
You should read. Why don't you read all the anti-Trump? Why don't you read it? You just did, so why don't you read it?
Well, he had a lot of anti-Christian rhetoric. He was part of a group called the Wide Awakes.
See there, he's trying to get her to read the anti-Trump stuff that the shooter wrote. And you can see that she dodges this. She doesn't do it, and probably that's because she doesn't want to give Trump more ammo with which to criticize her. Or maybe she's just worried about him walking off. Now, as a reporter in this situation, your job is to extract as much new and interesting information from the president as possible. But if he walks out on you, the only thing that you're going to get is a headline about Trump leaving the interview early. I do think Trump knows that, and I think he does enjoy watching this journalist squirm and her not being able to do anything about it. Then Trump does this thing that journalists absolutely hate. He turns the tables on her and he asks her a question.
Pretty sad. Do you think it's pretty sad, Nora?
He tries to link O'Donnell and possibly all of 60 Minutes with the Democrats.
I got associated with all stuff that has nothing to do with me. I was totally exonerated. Your friends on the other side of the plate are the ones that were involved with, let's say, Epstein or other things.
Your friends on the other side of the plate. Again, he's trying to put everyone who he sees as his opposition under one umbrella. Journalists hate this. Even if they see themselves as being more ideologically aligned with one political party or the other, they want to think of themselves as independent. And speaking of independence, Trump hinted at a controversy surrounding 60 Minutes parent company CBS. Last year, CBS's parent company Paramount was bought up by a movie studio called Skydance. Skydance is run by David Ellison. Now, David Ellison is the son of Larry Ellison, who is a co-founder of Oracle. Larry fronted a lot of the money for David to buy Paramount, so it's kind of a family business. Larry is a friend and supporter of Donald Trump. That created some questions about what would happen when Skydance took over Paramount and by extension 60 Minutes and CBS. Would both of those start moving more to the right? Depending on your viewpoint, you could say that's what happened. Now, I'm not going to litigate this here, but I think there is a lot of things you could point to that make a case for that. But clearly, Trump doesn't think 60 Minutes has changed, or at least not enough.
I hope one of your 60-minute episodes, which really hasn't changed very much from the last few years, I'm surprised, but one of those episodes should be on Southern law and the fact that they spent millions and millions of dollars on absolute far right and just bad groups.
He's referring here to the Southern Poverty Law Center. The Department of Justice recently brought fraud charges against the nonprofit for secretly funneling money to the KKK and Aryan nations. That's really not a good look for a nonprofit that claims to be fighting racism. And because Trump sees the center as more on the left, he sees this story as being better for his side of the plate, as he describes it. Maybe if CBS does do that story, it will redeem itself in the eyes of the president, but somehow I doubt it. Now, Trump says he does want to reschedule the White House Correspondents' dinner. And if that dinner does still happen, it will be very interesting to see what his speech says about the press. This clip of his press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, talking about his speech beforehand went viral after the shooting.
This speech tonight will be classic Donald J. Trump. It'll be funny, it'll be entertaining, there will be some shots fired.
There was unfortunately shots fired, just not from the president. Trump said this about his speech on the day after the shooting.
I was going to get up and make an entirely different speech. I was going to really rip it last night. I was talking about everybody. And then they said, well, my speech is going to be much different. It'll be a speech of love. But I didn't get a chance to do that. Probably I was better off if I didn't. I don't know. But
So what do you think? Is Trump going to go easier on the press from now on? Let me know what you think in the comments below. And if you want more news about the news, follow me at Newspeak Show on YouTube. I'm Holly Kellum, and you're watching Newspeak.